What's up, guys? Welcome back to Michigan Muckraker. My name's Michelle. Today is November 15th of 2023. And unfortunately, yesterday, Amazon announced that it chose Michigan to build a huge solar farm in Lawrence Township. And to top it all off, Lawrence Township can do nothing about it because the central government here in Michigan, under Davos woman Whitmer, took the power away from the township to veto it. So just in time, just last week. Isn't it great? It's unfortunate for Lawrence Township. I feel sorry for them, and I obviously feel sorry for all of Michigan. But we're gonna take our power back. We the people next year are gonna vote out all these people, and I have full faith in that. If our vote counts, which I have doubts, but I'm not going to get into that. Today, we're talking about the solar and wind farm bills that passed. We're going to talk about the solar farm that Amazon announced, and then I'm going to get into the assisted suicide bill that the Democrats have introduced here in Michigan, which is awful, and I'm going to share why. And I also want to discuss Michigan being the best place to live in 2050, according to the World Economic Forum. So, making it the epicenter of the plans for the United States, at least. And that's, of course, because we have a lot of resources. We have 20% of the the fresh water on the surface here in Michigan, and they want it. And so we're going to have to fight for it. But I'm going to jump in. I first want to there we go. Remind you, if you live in Grand Rapids or anywhere around Grand Rapids, even if you just go shopping or out to eat in Grand Rapids, you might want to go to the Bridge to Our Future meeting. Last night there was one, and it discussed the creative performance. Oh, this meeting will begin with a creative performance with teaching artists Gemini Davis from the Diatribe, and will provide an opportunity for feedback on the direction of the CMP. Tonight is a community-led panel discussion, which will kick off the meeting to address key topics of the CMP with an emphasis on equity and culture in the planning process. Again, that's tonight, 5 to 7. And then tomorrow, the meeting will feature nationally recognized urban planning and transportation policy expert Shane Phillips, author of The Affordable City. Phillips will address strategies for addressing housing affordability and access, and that's from 5 to 7 tomorrow. So I'll leave this information down below. Please, if you can make one of these meetings, do, and let me know what you have discovered, and if there's anything to worry about that you saw. I would really like to know. I won't be able to make both of them, and I don't know which one yet. I was planning on tomorrow, but it might be better for me to go today, so I don't know yet. But again, please show up if you can. It's important to understand where your city is going, don't you think? The next thing is I'm going to share how I found out. I was on Twitter, X, and this is the tweet that I read to find out that Amazon is coming. So Anna Christine, thank you. You're doing a great job. You guys are never going to believe where the first solar farm in Michigan is going. I'm sure it's a total coincidence. Rep. Andrews' district or neighboring district is the lucky recipient. Thanks to the energy package passed last week, your local government can't stop it. And so this individual was in the news last week for conflict of interest. He shouldn't have voted because he has a solar farm himself that he started in 2015. So he shouldn't have been able to vote, but of course he did because we have a corrupt government. This is another one. MLive announced it, and so here is the article. By the way, thank you guys very much for joining me. I really appreciate you being here. Please smash a like if you get any value out of these videos. It helps with the algorithm, push my videos, hopefully, to new people. The Quilted Gardener, thank you for being here. I do, too, have faith in voting these folks out because these solar farms will not sustain the state. We don't get enough sunshine, for starters, to have these solar fields work. I agree. It doesn't even work in California, right? And they're actually a sunny state. Michigan, for 6 months out of the year, I mean, it's It's beautiful out right now, and it's very strange because we're in winter season, and usually it's gray for 6 months, but the sun is shining. I love that. Supposed to be 60 on Saturday. It's crazy. Uh, which is one of the reasons why the um, World Economic Forum is saying this will be the place to live. If the earth is warming up and Michigan is not going to have 6 months of freezing cold weather and gray, and then I think everybody would love to live here because it's a beautiful state. Just needs to be sunnier. So if that happens by 2050, that would make sense. That it would be a destination location. Van Buren County, Michigan. Amazon is entering Michigan solar farming business. Amazon, the world-famous online retailer, has announced its first renewable energy project in Michigan, a new 85-megawatt solar farm to be built in Van Buren County's Lawrence Township, the company said Monday, November 13th. Southwest Michigan Solar Project will help power Amazon's local operations, including Amazon fulfillment centers, sorting centers, and delivery stations, while also providing new sources of clean power to local communities where the projects are located, the Seattle-based company said in the news release. At Amazon, we're constantly seeking innovative ways to bring solar power and wind projects online, both to power our operations and to bring new sources of clean energy to the communities where our customers live and work, said Nat Selstrom, head of energy, water, and sustainability for Amazon Web Services, in a news release. These projects are also helping create jobs, support local businesses, and boost the local tax base, which are all part of the Amazon's broader commitment to becoming a more sustainable company, he said. Now, I'm going to get on a little tangent because I just found out that next year, Amazon is going to require everybody that sells on its platform to know the carbon footprint, track the carbon footprint. Do you think small businesses will be able to afford the tracking software and all of the extras that go along with tracking carbon footprint? Your supply chain. Like, you need to know everything in your supply chain and report it. That's starting next year. It's going to absolutely crush the small businesses that sell on Amazon. And then you have all the looting and rioting, or rather just looting, that's going on all over the place. Brick and mortar stores closing all over the place, going online, and now they can't sell on Amazon. It's all such a mess. It is all such a mess. And so when they say that they like small business has been decimated the last 3 years, and they want to put the nail in the coffin. And that is what this ESG crap and this carbon tracking, it's going to do. That's what it's going to do. It's going to destroy small businesses. Do you think, I'm going to say Weeby's a party store because it's in Morley, and I have known that family forever. Do you think that Weeby's a party store is going to be able to afford to have all that tracking stuff? If it's small businesses, man. They like to eat up small business. Thank you for joining me, Hernandez. I appreciate you being here. And yes, it's terrible. So the company did not immediately provide the cost of the farm, of course not, or the number of jobs expected when asked by MLive Kalamazoo Gazette. The footprint of the farm was not immediately disclosed by the global retailer. The company shared a photograph of a solar farm project it developed in the Maple Hill area in Pennsylvania with 100 megawatts of capacity, which is similar to the power production planned for the 85-megawatt Michigan project, Amazon said. So that's the picture on the thumbnail, is this Pennsylvania wind farm. Amazon has 479 wind and solar projects across the world, the company said. Once operational, these projects are expected to generate more than 71,900 gigawatt hours of clean energy each year, or enough to power 6.7 million U.S. homes. All lies. It's all lies. There's nothing clean about this energy. We know this. Amazon set a new corporate record for the most renewable energy purchased by a company in a single year. Well, who can compete with Amazon? And has remained the world's largest corporate buyer of renewable energy since 2020. Again, who can compete? The company said, citing Bloomberg Energy Finance as its source. Amazon has expanded its renewable portfolio into 26 countries and 21 U.S. states, including U.S. projects in Arkansas, Georgia, Maryland, Michigan, Mississippi, Missouri, Ohio, Oklahoma, Virginia so far this year, the company said Monday. So again, it doesn't matter if it's Republican or Democrat, the governments are pushing this getting off of fossil fuels and onto renewable energies, which it's all about being on the electric grid so they can control everything using smart meters and so on and so forth. Amazon expands new renewables portfolio into 26 countries. Okay, including new Michigan solar farm. The company said as of the end of 2022, 90% of the electricity Amazon used to power its operations was from renewable energy sources. I want to know how they get that figure. Like, how can they say that without it being a lie? I mean, it is, but I'm sure there's some kind of way that they can say that isn't a lie. For comparison on the amount of energy that will be produced at the new 85 megawatt station, the currently closed Palisades nuclear plant was an 800 megawatt power plant, according to reports. Timeline for the Van Buren County project was not available to be disclosed, the company said Monday. Right, NDAs probably signed all around, like usual. Amazon's operations in Michigan include 11 fulfillment and sortation centers, 14 delivery stations, and 8 Whole Food Market locations. I didn't know that we had 8 Whole Food Market locations. It must be on the east side. I don't think there's any in Grand Rapids. I should have checked. But Whole Foods is one of those locations where they are having you scan to get in. You can't get into Whole Foods without scanning a QR code. It's to train you and I to get used to digital IDs, which they're pushing, and none of it is conspiracy theory anymore. Everybody can see that because they're saying it out loud because they're so close to what they want to do. And so don't shop at Whole Foods. That's all I have to say. This is the state representative on energy committee-owned solar company. Michigan Rep. Joey Andrews claims company is dormant, but records show it was never dissolved. This was back in October. So well before they actually passed the terrible bills that took away the township power for wind and solar. But public records show that he has a solar company, Polaris Solar. The company was founded in 2015, never dissolved. And Michigan law requires that bills need an actual majority to pass, not just a majority of lawmakers present. Democrats controlled the Michigan House by 56-54 margin at the time. Had Andrews recused himself from the committee vote, the bill still could have passed. But if Andrews recuses himself from the House vote, there wouldn't be enough Democrats to pass it. At least one Republican would need to cross over. He didn't respond for comment. Now, I don't know exactly what happened with the House vote. I have to dig into that. But I haven't heard anything about him recusing himself from that vote. So this is just showing Amazon to require suppliers to support emissions, set climate goals. Amazon revealed in a report that its total carbon footprint declined in 2022 by 0.4%. And it goes on into some numbers. Hearst said, "We know that to decrease our carbon footprint, we must work with our supply chain partners to help them decarbonize their own operations. Beginning 2024, we're updating our supply chain standards to require suppliers to share their carbon emissions data with us and set carbon goals." While the company did not elaborate in the report on specific requirements or suppliers, Amazon's supply chain standards apply to all goods and services suppliers to the company and its subsidiaries, including vendors, service providers, selling partners, contractors, and subcontractors. This is going to hurt everybody. It's the evil agenda of our time that we have to, I thought, combat. And I'm not a doom and gloomer at all. In the end, I know that the good will win. But part of me feels like, as I've said in another video, that this is a hurricane and you can't stop a hurricane. It's too late. It's already been created. So at this point, we need to buckle down and get ready for the hurricane and survive it. And then when we come through the other side, the good side can rebuild because they survived the hurricane. That is what I'm thinking. I don't know, obviously, but things are happening so fast and it's so big that God has miracles in his sleeve, under his sleeve or whatever. So maybe. Good morning, by the way. Thank you again. Quilted Gardener says, "You have to wonder if some of these legislators that voted for this were bullied." Yeah, I mean, if you listen to Whitney Webb, the blackmail is one of the ways, Jeffrey Epstein and all that. It's blackmail, bullying, but then, a lot of people can be bought. unfortunately, and so when you have all the money, when you have the banksters behind you and everything else, it's really difficult for people to, you know, resist. It's difficult because if you don't get bought out, then again, they'll do something else. They'll blackmail you, threaten you, bully, whatever. And so yes, it's difficult, and people can choose good or evil. So I don't think that their people are evil, you know what I mean? So they can choose to be good. People can change, but you have to want to. So this is Amazon used an algorithm to essentially raise prices on other sites, the FTC says. Just one more thing about how dirty Amazon is. This came out November 2nd, so not too long ago. Amazon used a secret algorithm to essentially help raise prices on other online sites and also destroyed internal communications as the Federal Trade Commission undertook an antitrust investigation against it, according to newly unredacted portions of the agency's lawsuit. The new excerpts unveiled Thursday allege executives at the e-commerce giant intentionally deleted communications by using a feature on the popular app Signal that makes messages disappear. By doing this, the FTC said Amazon destroyed more than 2 years' worth of communications from June 2019 to at least early 2022, despite instructions it gave Amazon not to do so. Will anything happen to Amazon? Could anything possibly happen? I mean, what? You fine them? What do they care? Come down here, the FTC in 17 states sued Amazon in September, alleging the company was abusing its position in the marketplace to inflate prices on and off its platform, overcharge sellers, and stifle competition. This is why monopolies and oligopolies, just three, usually sometimes six, like for the trains, there's 6 corporations that own all of the railroad stations and everything across the United States. It's the same concept. If you have all the power centralized, corruption is much easier. The FTC's excerpts say the tool, codenamed Project Nessie, has been used by Amazon to pinpoint products that will allow it to rake in more cash. The company used it to predict where it can raise prices and have other shopping sites follow suit. Amazon activated the algorithm to raise prices on some products, and when others followed its lead, it kept the elevated prices in place. The agency said using Nessie has generated more than $1 billion in excess profits for Amazon, according to the FTC. So what? We sue them for $1 billion? Like, they didn't lose anything. The agency said Amazon deployed Project Nessie in 2014 and has turned it on and off at least 8 times between 2015 and 2019. So they manipulate the market, and I did not share that tab. I apologize. I was reading this article out of the Associated Press. Amazon used an algorithm to essentially raise prices on other sites. So that is what we're dealing with. Thanks for bringing that here, Whitmer. Is democracy too messy in Michigan? Obviously, our government thinks so. While voters speak up in Oakland and Mecosta County, Lansing lawmakers dismantle local control. The end of last video, yesterday, I read an individual's letter that he sent to all of the lawmakers, and in it, he made a very valid point. He had to get off of work 2 times and try to go down to Lansing and communicate with them how he feels for his 2 minutes, and both times he did not get the opportunity. So Lansing doesn't listen to you. It's hard to get to Lansing, obviously. And so the local township, that was what that was for. You can actually go to your township, and if they don't listen to you, you can recall them, right, Green Charter Township? But now it's out of our hands. There was a consistent thread in Michigan State Energy and Environmental Committee meeting Tuesday, which this, by the way, came out November 12th, so just a couple days ago. Democracy is too messy. That was the message. When it comes time to decide the siting of large-scale wind siting, there's 2 T's in sitting. Hello, I'm sorry. The siting of large-scale wind and solar projects in Michigan, it's best to let the experts decide. The Senate committee's amendments did allow more local power than the versions that came from the House. In the Senate amendments, developers would be forced to deal with local communities first before approaching the Michigan Public Service Commission. They would also have to contribute $75,000 to an opposing local community to defend itself in Lansing. Despite that effort at balance, Senator John DeMoose of Harbor Springs saw the endgame. Lansing, not local communities, would have the final say. What I'm concerned is that this effort allows the public to go through the motions of being involved. But at the end of the day, their opinion really doesn't matter, DeMoose said. Dan Scripps, chairman of the Michigan Public Service Commission, testified in defense of the bills. Of course he did. He wants more power. Because, as I've said before, replace crack with power and you have a politician. And, they're like crackheads, but they're powerheads instead, and they want it all. DeMoose asked him, say a local community opposes the project, but the commission wants it. What happens then? The only reason that it would come to us is if there wasn't a compatible local ordinance, that it was more restrictive than what's in state law, Scripps said. So as long as we say yes, you don't get involved, DeMoose asked. There was laughter in the committee room, but no answer from Scripps. But the answer was yes. It's exactly what's going to happen. Before Scripps, Puri from Canton, a sponsor of the House bill, testified that Michigan will be unable to meet its future climate goals without passing the legislation. The future goals that the government is pushing, it's a top-down push. It is not natural, authentic supply and demand, which is the law of economics. This is like communism. This is what this is, communitarianism, really. And there would be more solar and wind projects in Michigan if it weren't for those pesky local officials, supporters argue. Without a robust process in place, we can't improve the scale of projects needed to meet our generation goals. Puri testified, we've seen hundreds of projects delayed and abandoned due to permitting issues here in Michigan. Rather than persuade local leaders to embrace these technologies or lead efforts to vote them out, the answer from Lansing is to go over their heads, to take by force what can't be earned by negotiation, to say the unelected and appointed bureaucrat is better suited than a township board to make these decisions. Given the responsibility to the Public Service Commission makes sense to me, Farnsworth testified. Now, this individual I have an article on, they have money involved, of course. They have a farm, and they want to put wind turbines on their farm. Many of the township officials that I've talked to say they were unprepared to make these decisions and felt overwhelmed. What Farnsworth described is politics as usual. Yeah, if you want to be in politics, you're going to have pressure. You're going to have people saying, we don't want this, or being mad even. Like, that's what politics are. A feature, not a bug. Raised voices are the hazard of a field where 50% plus one confers carte blanche on the winning team. People don't like to feel powerless, so they speak up. And when their voices aren't heard, they recall office holders. If that's what constitutes overwhelming, so be it. I concur. A supervisor in a nearby township was also recalled. Later Tuesday night, hours after the Senate committee approved the bills, voters in Green Township recalled 5 of their leaders in a backlash to the Goshen project, which will build EV batteries in the Big Rapids area. A supervisor in a nearby town was also recalled, Bill Stanek, on the very day Lansing decided that local voices spoke too loudly, that democracy was too messy, the public used what voice they had. The use it or lose it is unfortunately close to reality. What we see as involved citizens, Lansing sees as pesky locals standing in the way of the governor's plans. Michigan had a trial run with central planning in 2020. It didn't go well, running 10 million lives out of the governor's office. There was a hopeful moment, Tuesday night in Southfield when voters rejected efforts to make the city clerk and city treasurer positions appointed rather than elected. Both measures failed 70-30. It turns out people like having a say in how their communities are run. Because does Whitmer live here? Does Whitmer live on this river? So this was an excellent article out of course, the Michigan's watchdog, MichiganCapitalConfidential.com. Thank you, James David Dixon. I thought that was a great article. Few things to share here. Same individual, but a couple days earlier, November 8th, 0.5% of Michigan's land needed for wind solar projects. Let me see what we got going on over here. The Quilted Gardener. Don't we elect local officials to affect our local area? What the hell? Yeah, we are living under a central government, which that's again communism, communitarianism. They're very similar, but there are some differences. So we come down here, about 17,000 acres in Michigan were now covered by solar and wind infrastructure, Script said. On the high end, that number could balloon to 209,000 acres. The highest number in terms of the amount of acreage of direct land use under a high growth scenario, again, is about 209,000 acres of new land, Scripps testified. That's a big number, but in context, it represents about 0.55% of Michigan's total projected or total area. And so it's a significant growth, and I'm not here to pretend otherwise, over what it's in place today, but it's still about 0.5% of Michigan's total land. I don't know about you, but 209,000 acres of what used to be farmland growing food, and it's starting to go on the mainstream media now that there's food insecurity possible here in America. It's not just possible. Food shortages, yes, they're going to happen. And yet we're going to turn where you grow food into places you can't grow anything. You can't grow anything by solar panels. Devastating. This is all devastating. Michigan energy transition will cost people their jobs, lawmakers admit. Lawmakers create bureaucracy to make plans for workers displaced by energy transition. So they destroy jobs here, then they create government jobs. And I think it was like 7 years ago, I heard 56% of the jobs here in America were government, which means that, 43% or 44% of people are supporting 56% of people because the government doesn't make money, it steals from the taxpayer. And I can't even imagine what it's like now. They just keep wiping out private business and making it government business, nationalizing it. Both houses of the Michigan legislature have passed a bill that admits the state's energy transition will cost people their jobs. Senate Bill 519 would create a new act, the Community and Worker Economic Transition Act, to provide for the creation of a state entity to develop a plan regarding and coordinate efforts addressing the impact on workers and communities of the societal and economic shift away from fossil fuels and toward renewable energy sources. Democrats in the legislature have portrayed Michigan's energy transition as market-driven, as a societal and economic shift away from fossil fuels. Market-driven bullshit. When the Senate debated last week, Bill 519, Senator Mallory McMorrow from Royal Oak said that anybody who is trying to convince you that it is mandated transition is lying. This individual is going on my little list of individuals, and I just copy this and paste it onto a Google Doc so that I know all of the different individuals and what they've done to screw us over or gaslight us or whatever. So that person's on the list. And this is just a list so that we can vote them out next year. But a minute prior, McMorrow admitted the role of government in the transition from gas engines to electric vehicles. Yes, admitted the role of government. The reality is that more than a dozen countries around the world, including the population of most industrialized nations, have already determined that they will be phasing out internal combustion vehicles within a few years, McMorrow said. Maybe within the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. McMorrow added, if every county has determined that they will no longer be allowing the sale of internal combustion engine vehicles, what prosperity exists if there are no customers left to sell your products to? Last week, Michigan lawmakers passed the bill mandating utilities such as DTE and consumers run on 100% clean energy by 2040. Good morning, Connie. I thank you for being here. Did you go to the meeting last night, by the way, in Grand Rapids? I wanted to know. And if not, are you going tonight or tomorrow night? Let me know. So this is an article out of MLive, which of course is garbage, but still has some information in it. They don't own their view. Michigan farmers seek state control of renewables. So this is that individual that testified. A pair of Michigan farmers on Tuesday told lawmakers they are exhausted with people who enjoy looking at their farmland, preventing them from using their property for renewable energy. A Christmas tree grower and a grains and livestock farmer both testified in Lansing this week about their frustrations with local level controls over renewable energy generation installations. Again, I wonder though, not only do they, maybe it is just authentic and this individual wants to put wind turbines on their farm. Or maybe they are bought and paid for, this individual. You know, we don't know. People in our township were spun into a frenzy because they were lied to by people who didn't want their view to change. The problem is they don't own their view, said longtime family farm owner Ostrander. Their view is farmland families like mine have tended, preserved, and paid taxes on for generations. They should not get to decide what we grow or what we harvest, and that includes harvesting the sun for electricity. Tuesday's roll call committee votes came after a string of public testimonies that started with 2 Michigan farmers, both of whom want to install renewable energy on their land, but were denied by local authorities. Both Ostrander and Montcalm County farmer Dick Farnsworth, there he is, testified during the committee hearing Tuesday in Lansing. Farming is a tough business. My family has owned the farm since 1880, and we would like to continue to operate it as a farm. Unfortunately, the land lease payments will not be able to cover the taxes and maintenance in the very near future. We signed a wind lease because we believe in renewable energy and that it would be a good boost in income, allowing us to keep the property as a farm, Farnsworth said. It's really terrible because now you just gave your farmland to the government and you don't even know it. I don't think you looked in the fine print. It's awful. This is a land grab. This is part of the land grab, and I have an article that explains why all this is happening. Perfect article. Come down here. Judy Allen from Michigan Township Association complained that the only reason a project could be denied is for the incomplete application if it otherwise met state standards. Madeline Fada from the Michigan Association of Counties criticized part of an amendment that would permanently take all local review measures away from communities whose decisions were overruled by state regulators or that ever had a renewable energy moratorium, even if it since lifted. It does not matter if the project interferes with the local master plan in any other way. If a local does deny the application for any reason other than setback distance, fencing height, or decibel level, and the Michigan Public Service Commission then approves it, that local unit no longer holds a compatible ordinance, and there's no process in place in this legislation for them to be eligible ever again, Fada said. Now, real quick, last night I went to my township board, and last month I went and I presented a resolution to try to stop the central government, taking power. My township sat on it, didn't do anything about it. To be honest, my township doesn't take it seriously at all. So in this battle of our time, my township is like, they're not ready. That's all I'm going to say. They're not ready. The bills are meant to force utilities off climate warming fossil fuels faster than planned to meet 60% renewable and 100% clean energy standards by 2040. However, Michigan has not built enough renewable energy to meet those benchmarks because of township-level opposition. These 2 bills, sponsored by Peary and Majority Floor Leader Ayash from Hamtramck, oh gosh, I don't even know that, are meant to address that conundrum. Oh, and then I'm gonna read this. Unlike fossil fuels, renewable energy generation does not result in greenhouse gas emissions, which warm global temperatures and accelerate the climate crisis. Again, if you've been here any length of time, you know that's all bull crap. Renewable energy generation does just as much damage to this plane of existence as fossil fuels, if not more. It has brought back slavery, so it's worse for humanity. Cobalt in the Republic of Congo. So this is from the Midwesterner. Hey, Zoltan the man, good morning. Also wanted to know, have you gone to the Grand Rapids meetings, or do you plan to tonight or tomorrow night, the vision meetings? Let me know. If you did go, I would like to know what it was like. Solar wind farm legislation proponents hail from these two locations, and these two locations are down in densely populated cities. And so they're not going to be getting any wind or solar. So that's why they don't care. The sponsor of the bill represents Hamtramck and Detroit. How many solar or wind farms do you think will be foisted upon his community by bureaucrats in Lansing if this bill becomes law? How many will be forced on Royal Oak, Ann Arbor, West Bloomfield? The gist of the social media posts is that the population density of Wayne and Oakland counties make both locations highly unlikely for the construction of wind and solar farms, which require acres of vacant land. So the individuals that push these bills through, have nothing to lose. This legislation streamlines the process so that lawmakers are free to use their land to produce clean energy as an additional source of revenue, should they choose to. This will make Michigan a clean energy leader, wean us off fossil fuels, and provide tremendous benefits to local communities. He lauded the bills as a win for the state of Michigan. Michigan may need a land mass half the size of Genesee County to cover with solar arrays and wind turbines in order to meet the renewable energy mandate that lawmakers are crafting in Lansing this week, Mauger wrote on X. Awful. Opinion: forcing wind solar on rural Michigan is bad policy. This came out November 3rd. Jamie Green and Dave Rushing out of Bridge, Michigan. Not going to read the whole thing. Of course, all of these will be linked down below so you can read them yourself if you are interested. Economically, the shift from agriculture to clean energy could lead to job losses, reduced tax revenue, and overall instability in rural areas. While clean energy projects indeed create some jobs, these should not come at the expense of a large number of existing employment opportunities within the agricultural sector. Additionally, the environmental impact cannot be dismissed. Clean energy is not clean at all. It requires massive amounts of dirty energy to produce and maintain the infrastructure required for solar and wind. Soil degradation, disruption of local ecosystems, and increased water usage are serious concerns associated with large-scale renewable energy projects. The writer also references energy storage projects. If this is a vague reference to lithium batteries or similar infrastructure, townships do not have the resources to battle a battery fire in addition to addressing the toxins being released into the environment. Just look at the recent situation in New York, where the governor had to issue a warning for residents to stay indoors until the fire was extinguished, which took 2 weeks. Is the state of Michigan going to cover all expenses incurred at the local level? On a legal and ethical level, respecting local ordinances and master plans isn't just about safeguarding our agricultural heritage. It's about fostering a sense of unity and understanding among neighbors. Divisive policies and projects can lead to long-lasting tensions, impacting not just farmers, but the entire community fabric. Noise pollution, disruption of clean water sources, the impact of the disabled, and other potential health concerns related to clean energy projects all warrant rigorous assessment. Absolutely. It's time to take a step back and reevaluate the path the environmental lobby is rushing us toward. We need to talk about every aspect of massively expanded wind and solar, not just empty promises, and how clean this technology truly is. We need to talk about the state coming in and forcing local communities to go against their ordinances and master plans. We must ensure that the interests of our communities are not just heard by genuinely prioritized, but genuinely prioritized in these critical decisions that will shape our future. Couldn't agree more. Excellent opinion piece out of the Bridge, Michigan website. Now, not going to read this whole thing, but this is just to emphasize that those individuals' point. We might need to let it burn. Firefighting in the EV era is a whole new game. Firefighting is a whole new game. The report, let's see. In fact, departments across the U.S. are finding out that the best way to fight such fires is to simply let them burn. How is that good for the environment? Zoltan the man says planning on tomorrow's meeting if I can get out of work at a reasonable time. Cool. I was planning tomorrow. I don't know yet today or tomorrow. It's an hour away from me, and I'm a housewife and caretaker first, so I'm going to try. I really want to get there today or tomorrow. I'm not sure. But hopefully, if I am there tomorrow, I meet you. That would be cool. And the Quilted Gardener, it's all a power grab and money grab. Absolutely. All right, so real quick, firefighting. This report cites and examples. It also cites an example from Franklin, Tennessee, where first responders encountered a Nissan Leaf EV fire in September, which required 45,000 gallons of water to douse, significantly more than 500 to 1,000 gallons typically needed for a gasoline vehicle fire. 500 to 1,000 gallons of water versus 45,000 gallons. How is that good for the environment? These batteries contain combustible chemicals and self-oxygenating properties. Can reignite long after being extinguished. Tom Miller, an instructor at West Virginia University Fire Service Extension and the National Volunteer Fire Council, highlights that these fires also release extremely toxic fumes. Fire departments are adapting to the EV fires, which often originate in lithium-ion batteries. In New Jersey and California, firefighters let Teslas burn out after accidents, as water can be ineffective against battery fires. It also goes into how they can reignite and so on and so forth. I wonder if it will be streamed. Highly doubt it. I actually was thinking about trying to stream, but if you look at Rosa Corey back, this was in 2011, but she went to one of these meetings, and tried to record, and they tried to stop her. Now, in California, under the Open Meetings Act, they couldn't do that. I'm assuming it's the same here, but I don't know. So they're definitely not going to stream it, though, because they don't want us to really see how they do the Delphi technique. All right, this is just showing this awful...
I'm coming through here because I've been told that there are old turbine blades that have been...
And look at what he finds.
Just dumped here.
A graveyard in the woods.
Here they are.
Full of these wind turbine
This is renewable energy,
blades
by the way.
that cannot decompose.
Remember that word renewable?
This is what we're doing.
I mean, they're worn out.
I've shown on several occasions the graveyard that they're burying the wind turbine blades. It's terrible. So this right here, local land use controlled by United Nations? Yes, activist says. This right here is Rosa Corey. She is the one that paved the way. Unfortunately, she passed away in 2021. We really need her now more than ever, but this article explains exactly why all this is happening, the real reason all this is happening. The United Nations wants you to live in high-density cities, not in suburbs or rural communities. That's the word from Santa Rosa activist who urges all communities to fight an attempt by the federal government and United Nations to control local land use planning. I'm not crazy. This is true, she says. I hate that we have to say it. I'm not crazy. Of course you're not crazy, but people call her crazy a lot. Let's see. The UN program is the umbrella organization of such land use programs as smart growth, sustainable growth, controlling greenhouse gas emissions, redevelopment agencies, and regional governments such as the San Joaquin Partnership, the Council of Governments, and the Sacramento Area Council of Governments, Corey said. Corey urged everyone, regardless of political affiliation, to strongly oppose any form of regionalism in smart growth and fight hard to defeat any political candidates who support any of these concepts. Again, this was back in 2011 when she started really going around and talking to whoever would talk to her, which wasn't mainstream media. I first saw her a long time ago on Alex Jones, because I had an Alex Jones phase. But she was on several different alternative media sites back in the day. Vogel added that he's received phone calls from several Lodi citizens and action members protesting smart growth and other land use strategies. Okay, it goes into what UN Agenda 21 is. The basic philosophy behind Agenda 21, she said, is that the community's rights rank ahead of the individual's rights, especially when it comes to property. That includes redevelopment agencies and eminent domain. Doesn't that sound familiar? Your individual rights are being considered a threat of a global community, she added. Agenda 21 and land use planners throughout the country use issues such as climate change, water pollution, and air pollution as reasons to make development more high density, Corey said. A primary example are planning agencies that encourage you to have a retail store downstairs and a home upstairs, whether you want that kind of development or not. So that's why it's happening. And again, I don't know what we can do to fight it, because they are after our private property, because there is no private property in communism or communitarianism. The community comes first. So the individual doesn't get any private property. So I wanted to just share these really quick, these bills. So HB 4127 declares all polling locations and drop boxes as gun-free zones. HB 4129 can make you a felon if an election worker thinks you are harassing them and provides no protections for poll challengers or poll watchers. HB 4156 proposes Michigan enter in the National Popular Vote Compact, which will take away Michigan's voice in the presidential election. HB 4210 will allow some overseas voters to vote by email, threatening the security of our elections. Wow. 4569 would pre-register 16-year-olds to vote and share their personal private information with other states, including the ERIC system. And 4983 will force voter registration for anyone who applies for a driver's license, whether they want to register or not. So check out this was from Julie at Truth Julie. Thank you for that post. It's a great roundup of all of these terrible bills that we need to be paying attention to. I noticed when my nephew turned 18, the recruiter called him the day of. So it drives me nuts. I, of course, told him, do not ever, ever join the military. Do not sell your soul to the government, especially when you know they're so corrupt. I didn't know. I was in the Matrix still, and I didn't have anybody in my family that was in the military or been through that was alive. My grandpa was in, but I have never met him. So sorry for the side tangent. The reason why they want to register 16-year-olds is so they know exactly when they turn 18, or just more information. I don't know. I just don't like it. We're going to jump in now to the second topic I wanted to discuss, which is from this book, Move, that I bought, that I told you please do not buy, because the World Economic Forum Young Global Leader for Future Map Planning, he wrote it. But he says Michigan by 2050 will be the best place to live on Earth. And this came out, by the way, in 2021, and so did that book. How can the world collaborate to minimize temperature rise to save as many lives as possible? Even if all carbon emissions stop today, the effects of climate change are already here, and humans need to adapt to them. So it doesn't really matter what the hell we do, we're screwed? Is that what you're saying? Although, again, why is warming bad? Cold kills more than warm does. And you can grow more when it's warmer. Every place will need to adapt differently. Some places will fare better than others. According to geopolitics and globalization expert Dr. I should have looked it up, Khanna, and his colleague, Greg Lindsay, nowhere in the world looks more promising to be in 2050 than the state of Michigan. That's an academic assessment and not a personal one, he stressed. He lives in Singapore and doesn't have any ties to Michigan. This is because he is part of the World Economic Forum and knows the plan. He helps map it out. I think I've been to the state twice, he said, so I do this as a geographer and a political scientist. His new book, Move, The Forces Uprooting Us, sheds light on what it means for the Great Lakes region to become what he calls a climate oasis, and about the complex forces shaping the future of global migration. It's not climate change, it's climate change policies that is shaping this world. Khanna's forecasting is rooted not only in the analysis of climate effects, but especially in an assessment of human geography. What makes Michigan look good to him is not just its northern latitude and the abundant access to fresh water offered by the Great Lakes, but its economic promise and political situation. Even though, of course, climate models already were pointing to the direction of how Great Lakes and Canada, They could also just as soon point you to Russia. So how do you narrow down from there? He said. Well, you have to look at what are the geographies of political stability, economic opportunity, migration friendliness, and a wide range of other factors. He predicts that Michigan's trend of population decline will reverse, and he argues that smart infrastructure investment should both anticipate and encourage migration, both domestically and internationally. I'm taking that medium to long-term view. We should remember the state is still losing people, and yet I have full confidence that Michigan will gain them. You know why? Because next year, 10,000 illegal immigrants will be here in Michigan. Last year was 1,500. This year was 2,600. Next year will be 10,000. That's what they're predicting. Now, why would they predict that? The fact that lots of people are moving to Phoenix right now and Austin right now and Miami does not mean that it's the right thing to do from an ecological standpoint. It's simply the right thing to do if you're an individual decision maker looking for low taxes in a sunny place, he said. But it doesn't mean that the climate can support it as climate change accelerates at the end of the day. The climate has its say, and we have to obey it. Khanna isn't afraid to make contentious recommendation, and noted he drew fire for a provocative hypothetical scenario he suggested recently in the Washington Post. We're spending $1 billion repairing power lines in Louisiana every year that are going to get destroyed in the next hurricane. How about we give everyone a plane ticket to Michigan? He acknowledges that Michigan and the United States face political fractiousness, and I think that's how you say it, that make cohesive long-term planning challenging, especially around issues of climate adaptation and immigration. Khanna said that there are some goals and tactics that can generate productive discussions and actionable policy across party lines, citing bipartisan agreement on some kinds of infrastructure investment, interest, creating an enabling environment that unlocks more private investment, and desire on both sides in bringing supply chains back home. What do you think's going on here in Michigan? Exactly that. Both sides want to bring supply chains back home, even though it's China that is the market creator. They created the market of batteries and all that other crap. Anyway, the other thing is what they say here. Citing bipartisan agreement on some kinds of infrastructure investment, creating an enabling environment that unlocks more private. You know what this means? Creating an enabling environment that unlocks more private investment. It means public-private partnership. Public money first to mitigate the risk, and then that will unlock more private investment. This is how they talk. If you listen to any World Economic Forum videos, which right now they have their AI conference going on, and United Nations has a conference going on as well. So I don't know where the stars are aligned, but lots of big meetings, and I absolutely, I know that billionaires look at the stars. Millionaires don't. Billionaires do. Trillionaires. Do we have trillionaires yet? Anyway, Khanna also encourages political thinking across state and national lines to unlock regional potential. Cities and states should think not only about the natural and human assets they have, he said, but also about the networks they're a part of. When we think about Michigan and infrastructure, we should be thinking cross-border as well as domestic. Detroit is a thriving midpoint of the Chicago-Toronto corridor, and Chicago and Toronto are obviously two of the greatest cities in the world. And here you are, right in between them. Hence the World Economic Forum, smack dab in between them. And if you watch my Mega Regions 2050, which I'm going to do another one of those, but if you watch that, then you would know that the Great Lakes region is going to be the largest region in the United States out of 13, and it will go through Canada because there will be no America anymore in the New World Order, right? It's one world government. It won't be Canada and America. It's just going to be whatever they want to call it. What do they call it in Brave New World? Probably that. Since Huxley was a part of the Bilderberg group, or at least his brother was. So to me, I don't really know if Brave New World and even Orwell was in those groups of people, the Bilderberg group, Club of Rome, you know, the self-anointed assholes that have been around for probably ever. Let's see what we got here. Connie says, no, I did not go to the meeting. I'll probably not attend the meeting tonight. Connie says, no, I did not go to the meeting. I'll probably not attend the meeting tonight. I will review last night's meeting and review the agenda. Cool. And the Quilted Gardener says, sound like this guy got paid a ton of money to write this. Well, I do have to show you this. I mean, he could have gotten paid, but he's a puppet. Managing partner and future map right here for the World Economic Forum. And he also wrote a move, The Future is Asian, which he wrote back in 2019, by the way. And they want the future to be Asian, again, because America is individualism, free spirit, patriotic, fighting for freedom. And no offense, but the Asian countries are more apt to accept authoritarian regimes. So the future is Asian because they want a tyrannical, authoritarian New World Order. Technocracy in America, he wrote How to Run the World, and The Second World Economic Forum Young Global Leader. So that's why he wrote the book. And again, I hope you don't buy it. I will share any insights that I discover from it. So that is why Michigan is absolutely, like Christina Caramo said, the epicenter of the World Economic Forum's plans and the United Nations plans. Michigan lawmakers gave Ann Arbor $1 million for a splash pad. I'm not going to read this article. I just wanted to share that $1 million splash pad in Ann Arbor. They're saying it's because there's tons of money and they just need to get rid of it, but that's such bullshit. This is our money. This is why. Splash pads, by the way, UN Agenda 21 approved, probably because you won't be able to take a shower in your own home. You're going to have to go to the community splash pad to get showered up. Sounds crazy, I know, but this is all crazy, don't you think? Now, the next thing I have to share is really sad. It's awful. It's happening right now in Canada and other parts of the world. I think they have suicide pods now in the Netherlands. It might be Sweden. One of those. Michigan Democrats propose bills to allow for assisted suicide. This came out November 10th. A Death with Dignity legislative package introduced by Mary Kavanaugh, Kevin Hertel, Sam Singh, and Veronica Kleinfeld in Michigan. Another group of individuals that I'm going to put on the list of people that need to go out of the Michigan politics, aims to permit terminally ill patients the choice to request and use prescribed medication to peacefully end their lives on their own terms. Death with Dignity package, let's see. Also aims to permit terminally ill patients. I think I just read that. Okay. Opponents of assisted suicide, also known as physician-assisted death or death with dignity laws, often raise several ethical, moral, and practical concerns. Some common arguments against assisted suicide include sanctity of life. Critics argue that all human life is sacred and that intentionally taking a life, even with the consent of the individual, violates this fundamental principle. They contend that life should be preserved, protected regardless of the circumstances. Absolutely. Absolutely. Which is why, that's why I'm against abortion. Because we should, for one, abstinence, right? We don't have to partake, so you don't have to get pregnant. There are plenty of ways, even though I don't like birth control, there are plenty of ways to stop getting pregnant so you don't have to get an abortion. But if you do get pregnant and you do not want the baby, there are so many people that can't have children that would love to have your child, to raise it and love your child. And so I think we should help people live, not help people die. That's what I'm trying to say. Help people live, because life is a great gift. It's a beautiful gift. Number 2 thing to be worried about, a slippery slope. Opponents often express concerns about a potential slippery slope where the acceptance of assisted suicide could lead to the erosion of protections for vulnerable populations. They fear that what starts as an option for the terminally ill could eventually expand to include other groups, such as those with chronic illness, disabilities, and mental health issues. It's already happening in Canada. And it already happens right now. Oh, you can get tested oh, it looks like your child in the womb has Down syndrome. Do you want to terminate it? Think about how awful that is. And you don't even know if that's true, if they're going to have Down syndrome. You are trusting another human being. Medical ethics with your child, like whether or not to terminate, to kill your baby. Medical ethics. Some opponents, including healthcare professionals, argue that assisted suicide contradicts the ethical principles of the medical profession, which traditionally prioritizes the preservation of life and the alleviation of suffering. They believe that participating in assisted suicide goes against the core values of medicine. Absolutely. Inadequate safeguards. Skeptics of assisted suicide laws often express concerns about the effectiveness of safeguards and regulations. They worry that vulnerable individuals, such as those who may be coerced or have untreated mental health issues, could be at risk if the procedures are not rigorously enforced and monitored. Impact on doctor-patient relationship. This is the one I'm going to read just a little bit out of this book, With the End in Mind, because from a palliative care worker of 40 years, she came across an individual that was terminally ill, and they had assisted suicide at the time, and what he had to go through was absolutely awful. So just a little bit, I'm going to read out of that in a minute. But this is the impact on doctor-patient relationships. Opponents argue that legalizing assisted suicide may change the dynamic of the doctor-patient relationship. It does. It does. It's proven. It's happened. They believe that physicians should focus on providing palliative care, pain management, and emotional support rather than participating in activities that intentionally hasten death. And then, of course, religious and cultural beliefs. Many opponents of assisted suicide draw on religious and cultural beliefs that consider intentionally causing death is morally wrong. They argue that societal values should uphold the sanctity of life and discourage actions that intentionally end it. Absolutely. The man says, don't like thinking of despair, but holy shit, scares me that they want to do what they want to do with our beautiful state. Unfortunately, many sorry souls will blindly support. Yes, there are many people in the Matrix, and they will fight to protect the Matrix, unfortunately. And Connie says, the death cult, they are in hyperdrive to meet their quotas. Yes, depopulation. If you look at the Georgia Guidestones, 500 million is what they want. They're going to bring it down to 1 billion first, see how that goes, and then to 500 million. Right now, we have 8 billion people on the planet. That is 7.5 billion people that they want gone so they can have their finite resources to themselves, or at least that's what they say. Really, I think something different, which hopefully I can get to and share with you today. This is very quick. Let me read it. Again, I'm going to show you the book, With the End in Mind, by Catherine Mannix. Dying, Death, and Wisdom in the Age of Denial. Please, I definitely recommend picking this one up. But again, don't read it in public because pretty much every chapter, a different story, you will cry. And I'm not a crier, but this is a book you should read. So this is Please Release Me, B-side. Many people, this is her little take at the beginning that I'm going to read. Many people fear the possibility of unbearable suffering as a consequence of illness or accident. Some states around the world have legalized the practice of euthanasia or of assisted suicide in the hope that this will both reduce fear of an intolerable future for the many and provide an early death as an alternative to suffering for the few. This is based on humanitarian principles and utilitarian ethics. And yet, even the most carefully thought through changes can have perverse and unintended consequences. This individual, Yujal, I think that's how you pronounce it, was terminally ill with cancer. And today, Yujal is explaining to Emma, one of our trainee doctors, about the Dutch healthcare system. He knows that he was expertly managed throughout his illness by knowledgeable, competent, kind practitioners in the Netherlands. He appreciates the expertise of the surgery and ICU teams who, despite the challenges, have certainly extended his life. His only criticism is that there was a subtle, entirely unintended nuance in every consultation once his cancer began to spread. In the end, this nuance was too frightening to tolerate. The possibility of allowing euthanasia without prosecuting doctors who follow a strict set of rules is permitted in the Netherlands to provide a legal escape route from unbearable suffering towards the end of life. And Ujal had admired the Dutch pragmatism that enabled this practice. Yet once the possibility of euthanasia was raised for him, he found that he was afraid to admit to new symptoms in case euthanasia rather than symptom management was recommended. His conversations with his doctors developed a new tone. Their sense of helplessness in the face of his symptoms and helplessness at his prognosis communicated itself to him. He perceived a preference to control the uncertainty of the disease progression by accelerating his death. He ran away from that certain, controlled dying to live with the hope of uncertainty. It was a compromise that might break his body, yet save his sanity. He had experienced an unintended and chilling consequence of an entirely humanitarian change in legislation. He lived for 2 months and then he left, but this is the last thing she had to say. The possibility of unintended pressure is a dilemma currently confronting healthcare systems across the world. Once the euthanasia genie is out of the bottle, you must be careful what you wish for. Please read that if you can. It's good to understand because death is a part of life, and there are obviously people that are trying to run from death. Can't be done. But we're going to listen to 23 seconds of Mr. Bill Gates and his death panel discussion at the G20 meeting.
He's making because...
Oh, wait, let me turn it up. Hopefully it's loud enough for you guys.
Of very, very high medical costs and a lack of willingness to say, is spending $1 million on that last 3 months of life for that patient, would it be better not to lay off those 10 teachers and to make that trade-off in medical costs? But that's called the death panel, and you're not supposed to have that discussion.
That was, like I said, it was short, but it's just one of so many clips that you can find on this evil individual, Bill Gates, and how he wants to control life and death. It's awful. So we're going to stick to the topic. Michigan lifts partial birth abortion ban after Senate debate. This came out November 8th of this year. Now, if you don't know what partial birth abortion is, it is evil. It is, as you would think, the baby is partially born. And once just the head is out, terrible, I'm not going to explain what happens. They kill the baby, though. But just the head is out. And that is an abortion, even though it's actually murder because the baby could survive on its own. Michigan senators on Tuesday sent to the governor a package of bills that repeals certain abortion restrictions, but final passage came with a debate over a final change. The Reproductive Health Act, a mix of House and Senate bills, is to be signed by Governor Gretchen Whitmer, have some major tweaks since being first announced in September. Imagine that. State's 24-hour waiting period and its ban on Medicaid covering abortions will stay law after Detroit Rep. Whitsett broke Democrats' slim legislative majority by defecting on those points. Once uncertain repeal that did make Whitmer's desk, however, lifts Michigan's ban on abortions that use a procedure called dilation and extraction. That's the medical term for what is politically known as partial birth abortion, when an intact fetus is removed from the uterus. It's used after miscarriages and for abortion in the second and third trimesters of pregnancy. Even though Michigan is repealing its ban on partial birth abortion, it's prohibited by a 2003 federal law upheld in the U.S. Supreme Court in 2007. Repealing this law is entirely unjustifiable and barbaric, says Albert Lowell, Republican from Lowell, on Tuesday as he put forth an amendment to keep the ban in place. This procedure is extremely rare. I don't care. I hate that. That is the worst argument I have ever heard in my life. I don't care how rare it is. It's murder, period. As nearly 99% of abortions occur before 21 weeks. When abortions happen later in pregnancy, she said, they're often in very complex circumstances when women need options that include dilation and extraction. When really it comes down to, you will not know the real reason. It's between the doctor and the woman. Again, I'm just not for it. This procedure is extremely rare. Circumstances include when an abnormality is discovered with a fetus that would ensure death and suffering shortly after birth, or when the mother's life is at risk. This is complete hubris. How can you be so sure that there is an abnormality and that you should terminate the baby because of it? That, again, that's a lot of trust that was called correctly. You know what I mean? Oh, come down here. The Reproductive Act includes repealing certain abortion facility requirements like hallway width and procedure room size, which Democrats argue are unique to abortion and unduly restrictive. So what, they want to have smaller facilities or be able to abort babies in the hallways? I don't really understand this. But the fact that they're so, like, it's really disturbing to me that people in Ohio celebrated and cheered for abortion being legal. Like, what is wrong with our society? Like you said, a death cult. And I don't even realize they're a death cult. And this is because of the death in God in the hearts and minds of man. It's just a fact. Like Nietzsche said, no longer requiring abortion patients be given certain state-mandated information on alternatives like adoption. This includes this info includes pictures of fetuses. So, no longer requiring abortion patients be given certain state-mandated information on alternatives. It's like fast-tracking abortion. That's what they're doing. Allowing colleges to refer abortion services to students. I don't like it when the recruiter is in high school. I don't like it when the recruiter is college is a little more acceptable because you are over the age of 18. But allowing colleges to refer abortion service. Okay, allowing people to file civil action against state agencies if they believe government violated Michigan's new constitution right to abortion. Repealing a law saying health providers that don't perform abortions get priority when the state health department allocates money. So, again, death cult. Let's see what we got here. The quilted gardener, partial abortion is infanticide. I'm sorry, I'm probably butchering that, but yes, it's horrific. God help us. God help us is right. And what's really sick is this, it comes down to not only the depopulation agenda, but then they take the bodies of those babies and they sell them for science. Sick. All right, I'm switching it up a little bit. I'm sorry it's not better news, but different news. This is a bill allowing plastic bag bans passes Michigan House Committee November 10th. So, a tax on your grocery bags. A bill that would allow Michigan communities to ban or impose a special tax on single-use plastic bags, shopping bags, passed the House Committee on Thursday. Do you remember when we were going through COVID and you couldn't bring in your reusable bags that you bought? I remember that. I remember a bunch of crazy stuff that happened in the last 3 years. House Bill 4359 would repeal a state law enacted in 2016, which prohibits local units of government from passing ordinances that restrict or tax any form of bag or container used by retailers. Oh, by the way, Connie, it's rare until they make it commonplace. Talking about the partial birth abortion, you're absolutely right. Transgenders were rare, and now look at it. That's what happens when you brainwash children. The Republican-led Michigan legislature approved, the county planned to spend 80% of revenue from the tax to promote recycling efforts and 20% on educating the public about the tax. County officials claim they spent $200,000 a year cleaning up plastic shopping bags littering the community. I don't know. What say you about plastic bags? Now, obviously, I don't like that plastic bags go into the ocean or harm animals and such, but I also don't want a tax on the bags that they are providing. Like, are they going to provide reusable bags? Or are you going to have to figure it out yourself? Plastic bags was a green idea to allow paper bags because of all the trees being cut down. Ugh, I did not know that. Thank you for letting me know. You know, paper bags, though, they can actually break down. You know, if you find a paper bag in the woods, a year from then, that paper bag would be gone. That plastic bag will be there forever. So I think paper would definitely be better. You want to switch back to paper? They're talking about decimating hundreds of thousands of acres of trees, cutting them down and burying them in order to catch carbon. So if they care about trees, why would they do that? It's all so confusing unless you know that it's all about United Nations Agenda 2030, Agenda 21. Then it's not confusing. Then everything makes sense. All right. I think I have this one and one more, if I can get to it, to share. And then I'm going to talk about robotics and automation next week, all the different things going on in Michigan involving those two topics. And then I am hoping that I'll have my Biden's rural infrastructure playbook video deep dive ready for next week as well. And then the week after will be the Healthy Michigan Climate Plan. All right, so Michigan school touts new health clinic cuts out need for parents to take kids to the doctor. November 8th, 2023. Grand Ledge High School is among 26 schools recently awarded funds from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services to expand school health centers, which are mostly focused in rural areas of the state. Now, if you read the UN, Behind the Green Mask, UN Agenda 21, she says in there and predicts that all of the hospitals and other facilities in the rural areas will be closing down, and it has started, it has begun. If the hospitals in rural areas are being shuttered. And this is what's happening now in order to kind of alleviate that pain. The new funding for child and adolescent health centers throughout Michigan will ensure students can access those services without ever leaving their school. Such school-based health clinics, however, have faced controversy in some communities where local officials have taken issue with how some providers advertise their values and services to students. In Michigan, state law allows teens to cut their parents out of medical decisions on issues, like pregnancy, mental health, and drug abuse. Can you see where this is going? You're 16 years old, you want to be on birth control, your parents don't want you to. They don't need to know anymore. You can just go to your doctor in your school. Parents never need to know. Same thing with sterilization drugs, possibly. You think that you are a woman that thinks that you're a man somehow. And so now you go get sterilization drugs and your parents don't know about it. Like, this is, again, part of communitarianism and communism, because the nuclear family, or just the family in general, needs to be bust apart, and the government is in charge of your kids. The government owns your kids. You don't own anything. You own nothing, not even your own children, your own DNA. And not that you own your children, but you know what I mean. It's, you know what's best for your child way better than the government does. Not always. I'm not going to get into it. In June, what I mean is, not every parent knows any better than the government. Obviously, these parents that are saying their 2-year-old that's a boy is actually a girl, those individuals are no better than the government. That's what I meant. In June, for example, the grant, they're doing what the government wants. That's why. They're doing exactly what the government wants. Because transhumanism, there's no gender. They don't want you to have babies. They want babies born in a incubator, again, it's a sci-fi crazy nightmare. And it will not come to fruition, but there's going to be a lot of pain and everything else before we actually break out of this. So buckle down for the hurricane again. The government doesn't own your children. They sure want to, though. They sure want to. School health centers are a scary option, as they are forcing things on children, and often without their parents' knowledge or approval. You're absolutely right. And it's all going back to the government is your God. The government is the parent, is everything. The government wants to be everything in your life. to control everything about you and what you think, what you eat, everything. And Hernandez, it takes a village to raise a child. You are absolutely right, but ultimate say goes to the parent. In June, for example, the Grant School Board voted to cut ties with family health care over objections to a mural promoting the LGBTQ plus lifestyle that greeted students in the healthcare center lobby. Again, because you're brainwashing. The decision sparked, you're supposed to teach reading, writing, and arithmetic. The decision sparked a heated community debate that eventually led to the district renewing its contract with the family health care in September with specific restrictions. Stipulations of the contract include increased transparency, formalizing the Board of Education's involvement with the Community Advisory Council, regular updates provided by the board on operations of the school-based clinic, utilities for the clinic being billed to the health center or a third party, and removal of the student-created mural in the lobby of the clinic. Alan Nerschwander wrote in a release from Family Healthcare. While diversity, equity, and inclusion are at the forefront of everything we do, he wrote, Family Healthcare reluctantly removed the mural at the end of October to appease the board. The man says the chaos is going to get wild before it gets any better. Everyone has their breaking point, and the controllers are really pushing their buttons. Yes, what I say is they're really starting to put the squeeze on, and you're right. And that is why I have been saying 2024 is going to be like unlike anything we've ever seen before. And that's not a good thing. I wish it wasn't so. I wish people would see, when you go in there and you rob that Target over and over and over and make Target leave and go online only, you are doing the New World Order's bidding. When you go burn down whole neighborhoods, you are doing the New World Order bidding. When you go out and shoot each other in the street or say no ceasefire, you are doing the New World Order bidding. So stop. Just stop doing that. If they want you to do something, if they keep talking about civil war, say, screw you, I'm not going to do a civil war. Do the opposite of what they want. Sorry about my tangent. In other states, disgruntled parents have pushed back on the growing involvement of schools and contractors in important student health decisions with a Parents' Bill of Rights that requires notification to parents for healthcare services and student decisions regarding gender. While successful in North Carolina and other states, the parents' rights legislation is broadly backed by Republicans and strongly opposed by Democrats. The latter currently controls all three branches of Michigan. The initial $2.4 million in funding to 26 schools in 21 counties supports planning grants to identify locations in or near K-12 schools to add primary care, nursing, and behavioral health services for students, according to a DHHS release. It's part of the broader $25 million investment by the Whitmer administration to expand on 200 existing child health centers already serving students in Michigan. So again, our taxpayer dollars are going to decimate children, to mutilate them, to sterilize them. It's going to our enslavement. It's going to all types of evil things, and yet we still keep paying the taxes. When will we wake up and say enough is enough? Sean Williams, superintendent of the Eaton Regional Education Service Agency, touted the school health centers in an interview with WLNS. This is a great opportunity to bring the service directly to students. That kind of cuts out the need for parents to take their kids to the doctors when they can schedule that appointment right there in their high school. Williams claimed demand for youth services are high in the wake of COVID-19 pandemic when government shutdowns that isolated students for months. Again, people were calling that at the very beginning of the shutdowns. Mental health, speech of students, of children because of the mask. There's so many terrible unintended consequences of the last 3 years, including suicide is up because people don't have meaning and they're lonely, and it's awful what they've done to us. They've tried to sever a connection with our neighbor, because if you were isolated, you're more easily controlled. There are a lot of students that are dealing with depression. They're having behavioral issues because they haven't been socialized and working in groups and working with others. And so that service right on campus is going to be amazing here in Grand Ledge. The fact that we will bring it to the Grand Ledge High School and provide the services for our kids has been met with a lot of excitement in our community, Bill Barnes, superintendent of Grand Ledge Public Schools, told the news site. Other school districts receiving healthcare money are located in Suttons Bay, Frankfort, Alberta, Adrian, Reed City, Everett, Cass City, Shepherd, Sandusky, Bay City, Alma, St. Louis, Hillman, Springport, Kentwood, East Lansing, Madison Heights, Mount Morris, and elsewhere. I don't know much about many of these schools. Kentwood, is that a good school or is it more on the lower? And I'm just trying to, like, how are they selecting these schools? Is it for poor neighborhoods? Just a question. I don't know. Let's see. First we'll go here. The Quilted Gardener. The family is under huge attack. Praying people will wake up more and more. Yes, we must keep praying. We must. Connie says schools will become more than indoctrination stations. You're right. If we allow it, take your kid out of school. Don't co-parent with the government. Don't do it. Zoltan the Man says Trump's coming back to drain the swamp. The script is so easy to read once you realize, in my opinion. I agree with you. And I know that a lot of people don't. I respect that. But to me, there's no doubt that Trump is a part of the whole plan. And he will be president, in my opinion, in 2024. Hillary Clinton wrote a book called It Takes a Village. I don't like that. Hernandez says programming for today's environment. That's what I meant. A bunch of really good comments. Thank you, guys. The man says they call it Kent Hood for a reason. I didn't know it was called that. So that, I don't know about all the rest, but the very first thing I thought when I read those is that they're probably poorer schools because they go after the poor people first, right? Because we don't have money for lawyers. All right. I have one more thing I wanted to share, and it is a little bit different, I will admit. And I guess I should preface with, I am anti-war. You guys, probably everyone here knows that, and so I'm not talking about the conflict at all about what's going on over there. This is just an article. It came out in 2014 called Dark Innovation, The Role of Technology in Revelation 13. Thought it was interesting. I'm going to share it with you. Imagine a world of the future. It is a desperate world where human beings are controlled by a single tyrannical power. If we look behind the curtain to see what energizes this power, we find something much more sinister than a corrupt political agenda or a master plan of greed. We find a plot hatched by the dark prince of the universe whose ambition is to become God. Now, could all this be symbolism of our own evil inside of us? Of course, I don't know for a fact. It could be that people want to become their own God. It's the evil that's bubbling up from themselves, and good can as well. Or perhaps there really is a dark prince of this universe whose ambition is to become God. I don't know. Is it symbolism? Sorry if you heard that bump. Is it symbolism or is it literal? I don't know. But either way, we need to be aware that there is some kind of energy behind this whole thing. It's not just material that we live in. It's material and spirit, yin and yang. So, something to consider. The book of Revelation prophesizes a future government that Satan will control and use to deceive and manipulate the nations through the false prophet and Antichrist. And he, the false prophet, deceives those who dwell on the earth by those signs which he was granted to do in the sight of the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast, the Antichrist, who was wounded by the sword and lived. He was granted power to give breath to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or their foreheads, and that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of man. His number is 666. That is Revelations 13:14-18. I just saw another, and this is in the mainstream media now, this is in establishment media, a little rice-sized chip in your hand. And it will have all of your information, your central bank digital currency. All the money will be on it. All your information will be in a block, chained to somebody else using blockchain technology. We are going to have to choose whether we want to live in the matrix and be able to buy and sell and have the little chip in your hand. I don't know about the forehead. I mean, the chip that Elon Musk wants to put in your brain actually right now is going in the back of your head. It doesn't go in the forehead. So I don't know what that's all about, but maybe it'll change. Maybe, I don't know. They also have technology now that they can tattoo on you. That has little tiny chips. Like it's technology. It's not a tattoo like just ink. It's tech that they can put in you. Can they put it on your forehead without you seeing it, being able to see it? Like we don't know. We don't know. Revelations 13:14-15 describes the world stage that precedes the mark of the beast. The false prophet, the Antichrist co-conspirator, will perform counterfeit miracles and exercise global power as a religious leader. The most spectacular of his feats will be the Antichrist's faux resurrection after it appears he was assassinated. Something to look out for. I will leave, as always, this link down in the description so that you can read the entire article yourself. I highly recommend it. Again, I don't know if it's symbolism or if it's literal, but we are obviously going through the revelations. That's my take. You are free to disagree with me, and I love you anyway, and that's okay. The world is a better place with a diversity of ideas. So thank you guys for hanging out. That is all I have for today. Again, I have a ton of robotics and automation information for you next week. So please come hang out with me 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Monday. And if you guys are going to the meeting, if you're in Grand Rapids and you go to the meeting tonight or tomorrow, maybe I will see you there. I am really going to try to get there. Again, I think it's important. I don't know how much we can change, but we should still witness everything that's happening. At least that's where I think. I love you guys. Thank you so much for hanging out. Love your neighbor, and I will see you on Monday.